Шановні учасники, всіх вітаємо. Ми можемо розпочинати
Hello, dear participants. We can now start our webinar, Sensitive Communication with People Who Have Traumatic Experience. I am Sergey. There is Elena with me. We represent the technical working group on mental health, and we have with us Jitske Rullmann representing ARQ International. Hopefully we will hear lots of useful information today. We will be able to understand every aspect of this topic and implement this knowledge in practice. That's what's going to be possible for you. Yes, we can now start. Jitske, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Serhi, for this invitation and this introduction. Good morning to everyone. I'm very happy to see all of you and impressed by seeing so many people. Can everybody hear me right?
Я можу ще додати від себе, вибачте, що переб'ю.
I can only add that we have simultaneous interpretation available. There are some instructions you can find in the chat in case you have not selected your channel yet.
Exactly. I think people are finding the channel. That's good. Okay, perfect. Then I'll continue. So thank you for the WHO for this invitation for this webinar. And what I have understood is that you have asked for some advice and some suggestions and some experiences on how to have conversations about sensitive topics with people who have gone through very difficult situations in their lives. So that is what we are going to talk about today, this morning. We have about 3 hours for this webinar, and I'll try to divide it into 3 parts, and after each part to have a small break to make sure our own mental health stays well, and also after each part to have a moment for some questions. So as an introduction, we can, oh yeah, I have to introduce myself. So my name is Jitske Rullmann, and I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm working at ARQ, Center 45. ARQ is a center that is specialized in treating psychological treatment for people who have suffered from traumatic events in their lives. And most of the people we see, they come from countries of war, or disasters or conflict. So we see people who come from all over the world. Our partner organization, our sister actually is, or brother, is ARQ International. And with ARQ International, we also talk to other countries. We go to other countries and we try to exchange the knowledge that we have with our partner organizations also in other countries to see how we can best help the beneficiaries. So we can go to the next slide. So I have sometimes to look at my paper here because I cannot read your slides, but they look beautiful. I really love the letters that you have. So the question was to address sensitive topics with people who have gone through difficult situations. And I think the most important thing to address sensitive topics with other people is to make sure that you yourself feel comfortable, so that you feel well, you feel stable before you address sensitive topics. And that has to do with the fact that I think that it's really, really difficult to talk to someone when when going through something difficult, or to talk about sensitive topics if you have the feeling that the other person is not stable or doesn't feel comfortable listening to it. So that's why a big part of this webinar will also be about self-care, making sure that you feel comfortable before going into a sensitive topic, and also during a sensitive topic, and also afterwards, to make sure that your self-care is most important. And I know it's a bit of a cliche, but always we always know that it's important to help yourself first before helping others, because otherwise, if you drop down at a certain moment, or if it's too much for you, then you cannot help other people anymore. So self-care is crucial. So today we will be talking about being comfortable yourself before addressing a sensitive topic. And then we will talk about vicarious trauma, what might happen if you listen to very sensitive topics or traumatic events, what can happen to you. Also, we will talk about how to respond when a beneficiary is responding in a bit of a emotional way. It can be if a beneficiary starts crying a lot, or gets really, really angry, or starts reliving a traumatic event. So we talk about those things as well. And of course, we talk about how to deal with feelings of helplessness and hopelessness, or anger yourself. So how to deal with the feelings that you can have after a conversation or after a day's work. We can go to the next slide, please. Can I have the next slide? Yes, thank you so much. So before getting into this, or actually it's all about the window of tolerance that we are talking about today. And maybe if you've had more webinars already with ARQ, you've talked about the window of tolerance before, but I'm going to explain it nonetheless. The window of tolerance is actually a window of tension that we all have as people, in which we have the best option to listen to others, to listen to ourselves. So if we are in between, I don't know if you can see it, but if you are in between these two black lines of tension, it means that you can think well, you can concentrate, you can remember things, you can listen to other people. And you can reflect on how you are feeling and how the other person is feeling. But sometimes we jump out of this window of tolerance. We can go underneath the window of tolerance, and that means that our tension is too low. This might happen, for example, when you fall asleep. If you fall asleep, the tension is too low. You cannot really listen or concentrate, of course, and you cannot really reflect on your own emotions or your own feelings. But it can also happen if you are under influence, for example, or if you dissociate and you don't, you're with your thoughts somewhere else, or you are thinking about something else, and then your tension can go lower. Also after having lunch, for example, if you've just eaten, all the energy goes into your stomach to digest, and then it's more difficult to concentrate and to focus. Then you go below the window of tolerance. If you go up the window of tolerance, you go out, it means that there's too much tension. So it means that, for example, you will feel in danger, or when you don't feel safe with the person you are talking to, or when you have memories about traumatic events that you might have been through yourself, and it gives you a lot of tension. And then you can go out of the window because there's too much tension. In that case, if there's too much tension, you kind of want to relax a little bit. You want to make sure that you distract yourself a little bit, or do something to relax so the tension goes back into this window that you want. And it's the same one when you're getting really tired. If you get too tired during a conversation, or you get too tired, then you want something to activate yourself a little bit, to make sure you keep focused and concentrate. And why do I start this webinar today with this? Because this also counts for our webinar today, right? We will be talking today and exchanging for 3 hours, which is quite a long time. And there is a big possibility that during these 3 hours, something might happen to your window of tolerance. Maybe at a certain point you get tired. Maybe you have heard it all before and you get a little bit bored. Maybe you are very hungry and you have not been able to eat or drink anything, and so you get tired as well. Um, or maybe you hear things or you get reminded of things that raise the tension and you go out of your window on the other side. So my invitation to all of you today is to really listen to yourself and to try to figure out, am I still listening? Am I still concentrated? And if not, because you are out of your window, please take care of yourself. So if it means you have to stand up for a moment, walk away, or take a cup of tea, or if it means that you have to distract yourself for a second, or if you feel you need to go to the toilet, please do everything that is needed to make sure that you feel okay this morning and you feel well. And so, yeah, you benefit most from this webinar. And of course, after the first hour, we will have time for questions. So please, if you have any, write them down already for yourself. So we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So when we talk about self-care, in order to make sure that you are comfortable yourself before addressing a sensitive topic, we talk about self-care before a sensitive topic, during a sensitive topic, and afterwards. And sometimes I kind of compare it with cats. I don't know if you have any experiences with cats, but if a cat wants to say hello to you, if a cat wants to come to you and say hello, he usually walks to your leg, and then he kind of touches your leg or he bumps into your leg to say hi, right? That's what a cat usually does, like, hi, here I am. If your leg is stable, if your leg is comfortable and strong, then the cat can say hi. But if you don't feel stable yourself because of any reasons, and they can be very uh, um, well understandable, of course, but if your leg is not stable, the cat bumps into your leg, but it falls because there's no stability. So in order to make sure that you are comfortable so the cat can be comfortable or the beneficiary can be comfortable, we talk about these self-care topics. And we start with self-care before a sensitive conversation. And for that, we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. I see a raised hand. Is there someone who wants to say something? No? Okay. So self-care before a sensitive topic. And before you go into a sensitive conversation, it is important to check in with yourself how you are doing yourself. And then if you have done the check-in, we make sure that our bucket is empty. We put on our protection suit like a fireman would also do or a policeman would do. And then we make sure that our basics are right. So we talk about these things now. And we start with the check-in on the next slide. Thank you. And with this next slide, let's do this exercise together for a moment to do a check-in. So if you feel comfortable, please make sure that you sit upright With your back up straight, you can also lean backwards if that feels more safe to you. And feel the feet on the floor, your hands maybe resting in your lap. And if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes for a second to really check in with yourself how you are doing. And while closing your eyes, focus on the fact that you are sitting here right now. Let go of anything that you have done this morning. Let go of everything you had to do to be here on time. Let go of any stress regarding maybe logging in, finding the translation, making sure that the computer works right. And also letting go of everything that still needs to happen for the rest of the day. And then focus on your breathing. Where is your breathing right now? And there's no right or wrong. The way you breathe right now is exactly where you're supposed to be breathing. And it can be that you feel it in your stomach. Maybe your stomach goes up and down. It can also be that you feel it more in the chest, that your chest goes up and down with any inspiration and expiration. Exhale and inhale. It can also be that you hear the sound of the respiration of the inhale and exhale in the nostrils, the nose. And maybe you find it hard to concentrate on your breathing at all. That's also fine. And then ask yourself the question, how am I doing now, at this moment? Now that I'm sitting here, how am I doing? And maybe you can even rate how you're doing in levels of stress. You can do that with the thermometer that you usually use to see if you have a fever. Doctors do that. But now you can do it in the level of stress. So maybe if you have a zero tension, nothing at all, that means that you're completely relaxed or maybe even sleeping. If you have about 3 tension, it means there is some tension, but it's within the window of tolerance. If you have a tension around 7, it means there's quite some tension. You feel a bit stressed, but still within the window of tolerance. And if the tension goes to 8, 9, or 10, it means the tension is really, really rising. It feels that you're really, really stressed. And you might risk getting out of your window of tolerance, not being able to be here at this moment with your mind, with your body. And then if you have your level of stress at this moment and you are ready, you can gently open your eyes again. Look around you for a second to know where you are, to realize that you are in a webinar, participating in a webinar. So this is your check-in. This is to see how am I doing right now, this morning, this moment. We do this check-in in our team regularly together. So when we are together here in our team, we do the check-in and we share how we are doing. And we share it because it's important to know from your colleagues how they are doing and also to see if there's anything you can do to support your colleagues if needed. And sometimes the tension can be high because of work. Sometimes the tension can be high because of things that happen at home or because of worries you have about people who are at home or family members, friends. There are so many reasons why you can have tension, of course, before starting work. So it's good to pay attention to that, to know where you are. Because if your level of stress is already high before you start the day of work, it becomes more difficult to have a sensitive conversation with someone else, of course, because you're already tense. Now then you go to step number 2, which is emptying your bucket. It's the next slide. And when we talk about emptying your bucket, it means that kind of, if you know, I don't know if that expression also exists in Ukraine, but in the Netherlands, we say it's the drop that, how do you say that in English? It's the drop that makes the bucket flood. So if you have a bucket and it's already full with water because you have already so much to bear, you have so much to handle, you have so many things to cope with, then you need only one drop and the bucket will start flooding, right? Because then it's too much. And if you are in a situation where you have to talk to people about sensitive topics, it's important to have your bucket a little bit empty. It doesn't have to be completely empty. I don't think it's possible to have a completely empty bucket. Or maybe people who meditate a lot, they might find it easier to empty the bucket, but usually it's difficult. You have some water in your bucket, that's okay, but don't have it full at the beginning of your day or before a sensitive topic, because it can be really, really hard to listen to someone. So make sure you empty it to see, are there things that I can give to someone else? Are there things that I can put aside right now or park for a moment because I don't have to think about them now? Or do I need to do something to get rid of the burden that I have at this point? So go into the conversation with a half full bucket or an empty bucket. And then you go to number 3, the protection suit. It's the next slide. The protection suit. The protection suit is there for to make sure that you are protecting yourself before going into a sensitive conversation. And the thing is, a fireman puts on a protection suit before going into a dangerous situation. Policemen do that, army people do that. A lot of people have protection suits. People who work with bees, they put on a protection suit. But to listen to traumatic stories, or to listen to sensitive subjects from people can be really hard as well, because it might be not so dangerous to you physically, but it can be dangerous for your heart, for your mental health. So it means that for us, it is important also to make sure that we have some sort of protection suit before we go and talk to someone else about sensitive topics. And that protection suit is individual. So everyone needs something else for that protection suit. It can be a ritual that you do for yourself to make sure that if I do that, then I feel more grounded or I feel more protected. It can be the distance that you have between yourself and the beneficiary you're talking to. It can mean a certain place that you want the beneficiary to be, somewhere in the office with you where you feel okay or it feels good. Some people find it important to have a plant, or they have something with them that they think that brings them luck, or it gives them a feeling of protection. It can also be, what I do, for example, is that I always open the window for a moment, make sure that the window is open and all the air that is in the office already can go out and new air can come in. And that is a way for me to have the feeling that everything that we've just talked about can go up in the air and it kind of cleanses my office again. And so everybody has their different ways of protecting themselves before going in a conversation. Make sure that you're grounded, and I always breathe. Before every conversation, I breathe and try to feel, how is my breathing right now? So that is different for everyone. Maybe you have something for yourself. Maybe you already do something to protect yourself before going into this conversation. Maybe it is about how you dress, that you feel like, if I dress like this, I feel stronger before going into a conversation. Or yeah, it can be all kinds of things. So maybe you can think for yourself, what helps you to feel apt for difficult conversations. And then the fourth thing on the slide, is going to be the next slide, is to eat, drink, and sleep. And it sounds very easy because, of course, it's important that you are nurtured yourself, literally. You nurture your body by eating and by drinking, and that it's important to sleep, because the sleep is our best way to recover from things, to recover from stories, to recover from stress. Sleep is the most important thing. But these things are also not so easy, because sometimes there is no food, or sometimes there is nothing to drink, and sometimes you want to sleep, but it's not possible because there's too much noise, or there's stress, or there's war going on, or there are so many insecurities, or you have so many thoughts in your mind. So it's important to find ways to make sure that you are nurtured in a way, the best way possible within the situation. Of course, we know the situation is not at all optimal. So within the possibilities there are, to see if you can find ways to eat, drink, and sleep. And if that doesn't, if it's not possible, and if you know that you have not been eating for a long time, or you wake up in the morning and you have hardly had any sleep, then know that you might be more vulnerable for conversations. And that might mean that maybe you have to limit the conversations a little bit more that day. Or it might mean that you don't go into too much detail with people because it's not the best day. Your bucket is already full. So see for yourself, make sure that you know how you are doing at the beginning of the day. And if it's possible and you are nurtured and you have had some water or drink or coffee or tea, um, then you know that the ground with which you're going to have this topic is more solid. Thank you. So then we go to the next slide, which is about self-care during a sensitive topic. And self-care during a sensitive topic is when you are already in a situation where a sensitive topic comes up. It might be because the beneficiary is talking about it, him or herself, or it might be because you are asking about it, but then the sensitive topic is already there. And if we talk about during a session, we have certain things that we can focus on, like the setup. Our attitude is important. The breath is important, to breathe. Mirroring is important. I'll talk about that later. Creating a bubble can help. And the difference between empathy, sympathy, and fusion. So to start first with the setup, the attitude on the next slide. And when we, thank you so much. Here you see the attitude during the next, or during a conversation. What is important to know that if people go through traumatic events, it is always something that happens without their control. So a traumatic event is always something that goes along with feeling powerless. It is unpredictable. Something just happened and you didn't know it was going to happen. It doesn't fit into your worldview, and it suddenly happened. So it was unpredictable. People have no control over it. It usually brings chaos because it doesn't fit into your worldview. And the people around you are not so liable. So the situation is you cannot rely on how you think the world is working. That is the basic of trauma, actually. So what is important in a conversation with someone who might talk about a traumatic event or a sensitive topic, it is important to give the contrary, to make sure that the situation is predictable, to make sure that there is control, to make sure that there's no chaos, but it's kind of, clear what is going to happen, and also to make sure that you are liable. And how do you do that? You can do that by, for example, letting know how the conversation is going to be, to say, we are going to talk to you today about this, or I'm going to ask you about this because of this reason, or I need to know about this, or to say, I can do this for you, I cannot do that. So to be clear about what it is that you can do for someone and also what you cannot do. Make sure that someone has control is by asking constantly, is it okay if I ask you a question about this? Can I ask you a little bit more about that? If you ask for permission, then the other person has the control back. So the person can say, yes, you can ask a question, or no, I don't want to talk about it. So give clarity. Don't over ask someone, or don't talk about so many different topics at the same time, but try to keep it clear, one thing at a time. And to be also liable, to say, okay, we have this conversation right now. I am here for you now in this conversation. We have 15 minutes, for example, and after those 15 minutes, unfortunately, I have to continue. Or you are here because of financial reasons. We talk about your finances. Of course, you can talk about things that happened to you in the past, but there's nothing that I can do about that. Or I'm not a psychologist, so I cannot go into detail on your traumatic stories, for example. So that is the setup. Make sure, always keep in mind that the other person who has gone through a lot has felt very, very powerless. And to already have the feeling that you have some power, that you can do something, is so important. So for example, what I try to do here in my office is if people come here, that they can choose where they want to sit, if that possibility is there. Because then I know from the beginning they sit at a place where they feel most comfortable in this office, given this situation. And then I ask, do you want to talk about this, or what do you want to talk about today, to make sure that the control lies in the hands of the beneficiary. And then during the conversation, we go to breathing. The next slide. So whenever you feel that in the conversation you hear things that are heavy or difficult to listen to, or can I get the next slide, please? If you hear things that are difficult, if you notice that your tension is rising because of things that you are hearing, make sure you focus on breathing. As soon as you focus on breathing, you are sure that you focus on your own well-being. You focus on how you are sitting, how you are doing, how you're feeling within yourself. It doesn't mean that you have to go and sit and sigh, right? So if a person tells you a lot of things, and you go like, okay. Yeah, I mean, it has to be sensitive, of course, but it's good if you listen to other people's stories. It's good to make sure that you focus on your breathing at the same time. So you make sure that you don't go into the story too much. You don't go in into the other person, but you keep some distance because you know you're also focusing on your own breathing. I do that a lot during conversations, especially when I hear, of course, we do the trauma treatment. So we go into detail. We ask about all the details that people have gone through. That is part of our job. But when we hear details, sometimes they're so horrible, or often they're so horrible to listen to. It's actually not very sane as a human being to keep listening to all these stories. And so then what I do is to breathe at the same time, to focus on how my body is doing at the same time, so that it doesn't overtake me. Yeah. So that is for the breathing. And then we go to the next slide, which is mirroring. And with mirroring, we know that we have mirroring cells in our brains. And that means that there are all these kinds of research has done for it, but it means actually that sometimes the brain has the same response when seeing something as to when doing it yourself. So, for example, if you see someone putting something in its mouth, in her or his mouth, um, it can cause salvation. What is not salvation? Saliva in your own mouth, because you see someone eat, and because you see someone eat, it can cause a reflex, or a something that happens in your mouth while seeing it, even though you're not putting anything in your mouth. And so what happens is, if we listen to a story and we hear the story and we can even see it visually, because we can see in front of our eyes what the other person is telling as kind of a video, it can feel to us as if it's happening to ourselves. Our brain can feel as if it is happening to ourselves. And we know it is getting even worse if we actually mirror the way that people are non-verbally expressing themselves. So maybe you've had that sometimes when you look at a movie, when you see a movie and something happens in the movie, and then you kind of notice that you're looking at the movie like this, even though you're not in the movie, you're not in the situation, but your whole face is as if it's happening to you, or as if as if you're right there. By doing this with your face, you give your brain the information that something horrible is happening. So it can feel to your physical you, to your brain, as if it's happening to you. Knowing that means that it's important also again, to keep breathing, to keep focusing on the breath, but also to be aware of when you are listening to someone, that your mirroring is not exactly the same as the other person is doing. So if the other person is telling a story and feels really sad and might be crying, for example, that's okay, of course, to make sure that you keep your own physical as relaxed as possible. It doesn't mean that you have to go and do something completely different, or to laugh if someone is crying, or to laugh if someone gets angry. Of course, no. But it means to not go into the same way of expressing yourself while looking at the other person, to make sure that your brain also gets the information that you are still safe. The funny thing is that even if we do like this, if we do like this, or maybe you can do this for a second just to try for yourself as an experiment. If you make a fist and you squeeze your fist very, very tightly, you already give your brain and your nervous system the signal that something is coming up. So your whole body is already going into tense mode because maybe you have to go and fight. This is the signal that you give to your brain. So if you relax your hands, make sure that your hands are relaxed on your lap, you give your brain the signal that you are safe, that it's okay. And that might be something to consider while having this difficult conversation with someone and you feel that it is affecting you, which is okay. You're human. So of course it's affecting you. That should be the case also. I think you should be more worried if you listen to sensitive topics or you listen to people and it doesn't affect you at all anymore, because then there's some sort of numbness. But make sure that you stay healthy while listening to it, while trying to relax as much as possible and giving a calm and relaxed signal from your body to your brain and from yourself to the person that you are listening to. Then we go to the next one, which is a bubble. It's the next slide. And when we talk about the bubble, it's something that you can visualize for yourself. People have different ways of visualizing during a conversation, but what I do sometimes when I feel that the emotions of the other person are affecting me too much, or it's really it's really I see a question if it's possible to get the slides also in English. Absolutely, yes. So when the emotions of the other person are really affecting me because they're really entering my emotional field, what I then try to do is to visualize a bubble like this bubble that you can see right now. I visualize it as if it's around me. And when I visualize it around me, with every breath that I take, it goes like it can breathe, right? Up and down. And of course, nothing really happens apart from the fact that you are making some sort of separation between what is theirs and what is yours. And already by focusing on something at the same time, it already gives a little bit of separation. So for me, this bubble helps. But I know that colleagues sometimes try something else. So for example, they try to breathe vertically. That sounds maybe a bit strange, but you can be very focused on the person that you're listening to, and if you then focus on breathing vertically, as if you are breathing upwards instead of outwards, it also helps you to separate yourself a little bit from the feelings. But what you can also do is have something in your office that you can play with. For example, some people have a pen, and so you can just play a little bit with your pen to make sure that you have some sort of distraction. Not too obvious, of course. You cannot go and look at your phone for a distraction because that is not very friendly if you have a sensitive conversation, but to have something in your hand just to distract yourself. I know that you even have these rings that exist that have that you can play with because they roll around themselves. That might help. And for the beneficiaries, we have that. For example, we have these balls in the office. We have different kind of balls or stress balls, so people can do something while talking about a sensitive topic to make sure that they can do something with attention. And of course, you can do that yourself as well. And then the last one on the last slide, during a conversation, is the differences between empathy, sympathy, and fusion. So with empathy, sympathy, and fusion, there is a difference in how close you can be to the person that you're listening to. And maybe you've already heard this this difference, but when it comes to empathy, empathy is actually putting yourself in the shoes of the other person. So trying to yeah, put yourself in the place of the other person to try to feel what the other person might be feeling without going along with it. On the next slide, you see the different pictures of it. When we talk about sympathy, you actually kind of go along with someone. So, for example, if someone says, I have a neighbor that is very, I have a neighbor that is very annoying. When you are sympathetic, you say, oh, yeah, that neighbor is very, very annoying, right? If you are empathetic, you say, oh, that must be horrible to have a neighbor who is uh, annoying. Um, uh, and if you go into fusion, you take it on you. Then you say, oh, yes, I also have a very annoying neighbor. So you go into the same thing. So we are on the next slide. Maybe we can see the next slide. So here you see the differences again between, yeah, sympathy, empathy, and fusion. So sympathy means, yes, I agree with you completely, and that must be very annoying. Empathy means you put yourself in the shoes of someone else, and at the same time so you're close to the other person, but you stay distant, and you say, I feel that it's difficult for you. I understand. And with fusion, it means you take over. And that might be very difficult because I was now making a bit of a joke about an annoying neighbor. But when it comes to talking to beneficiaries about traumatic events, there is a very, very big chance that it might touch also your own experiences. So when someone is talking about something that horrible that has happened to them, you might recognize it. And you might feel immediately, wow, yes, I've been through this myself as well. And then it's really, really difficult to keep that a little bit separated, to not immediately take it on you. So the goal is to stay empathetic, to make sure that you can listen to the other person, put yourself in other person's shoes, but don't go and sit in the same mud with the other person, because then you cannot get out. You both cannot get out. I sometimes call it sitting in the mud with someone. So if someone is really, really feeling horrible, he or she sits in the mud because it's all muddy and chaotic and it's horrible here. And then what you can do is sit with someone next to it, but not go under the mud yourself, because then you cannot help anyone anymore. Yes, so that is what you can do during a session. Now we go and continue to what you can do after a session on the next slide. And then we also have 4 different things that we can do. First of all, empty your bucket again. Second of all, shake it off, literally. The third one is peer support, talk to other people. And the fourth one is coping mechanisms. So first, let's empty the bucket again. So that is now the next slide. If you've had a difficult conversation and someone goes out of your office and you have to check in with yourself again. How was this? How am I feeling right now? And then could go and see if you can empty it again, to let it go, maybe by breathing or maybe by literally letting it go for a second. Yes, thank you. It's already the next slide on the bucket. So thanks. To give an example, Yesterday, I was talking to someone who had a lot of suicidal thoughts and who was suffering from a lot of difficulties, and it was very, very heavy, and it was very sad. And I really felt for him because I knew that it was very, very, very sad and very hard. And then I can feel it myself as well. So after the conversation, if someone leaves, then I really feel I need to, support myself also a little bit, not go into the next conversation immediately, but support myself for a second. So again, I open the window to make sure that the fresh air comes in. I breathe for a couple of times, even though maybe the next person is already waiting outside. I don't go and rush into it because I will not be in my full strength then. So I just take some moments to breathe, maybe if possible, find something to drink, and then go into the next conversation. Then the second thing you can do is shake it off. That's the next slide. And the funny thing is that when it comes to trauma, animals are way better of dealing with it than we are as humans, in a sense that as humans, we have the difficulty that we can think very clearly about what happened. So if you imagine a deer, a deer that crosses the street and then almost runs into a car. If the deer sees the car, you have the deer in the headlight. It freezes. Usually it freezes for a moment, which is something that we as humans can do as well. Often we freeze when something horrible happens. Then the deer runs to the other side. It survives. And what it does then is it shakes it off. It literally shakes it off. So it goes and just startles a little bit and then jumps up and down. And then the stress is out of the body. But as humans, what we tend to do is we run across the street. There's a car coming. We freeze or we run. We are on the other side of the street. And then we start thinking, I could have died. This could have gotten way worse. I'm lucky. This could have been way worse. What would happen to my family if I would have gone under this car? So we have so many thoughts that complicate the way we deal with it. We start to deal with it in our minds, but not letting go of the stress of our body. So it's good to literally let the stress get out of your body, and maybe we can try that together. The idea with this exercise is that you breathe in two phases, and you breathe out in one. And I don't see myself, so I have no idea what it would look like if I go and stand up. But the idea is that you stand up, then you breathe in first to the front, the second one, even more, and then you bend over with one big sigh. And then you repeat. One up, second up, and you bend over. It's really strange not to see yourself. And you can see me. So one more time. Let's do it all together. Yeah? Breathe in. First, arms up. Breathe in second. Even more. So your lungs are completely filled with air. And then with a big sigh, you bend forward. This is one way of trying to let go of stress out of your body. But there are so many different ways. Maybe dancing. Maybe jumping up and down, literally. Or maybe shaking it off, literally. Everybody has his own ways. Yeah. So I hope everybody feels a little bit energized now, if you went along with me. Then we go to the next one, which is peer support. It's the next slide. If you have had a difficult conversation and you cannot shake it off, you feel that it keeps being in your mind, or you feel that it's still occupying your emotions or your thoughts, then see if you can find a colleague or someone to talk to. And of course, you can talk about what is bothering you without actually explaining what it is that the other person has told you, because of course you probably have confidentiality rules as well. You cannot talk about what other people tell you. But you can say something about, I had a very heavy conversation, or it was really affecting me very much, and it's still in my body or still in my mind. So support each other in that. Find help, because we are social creatures as human beings, and it can help to share how you're feeling with each other. And then the last thing you can do after conversation is, and maybe you can do that at home or maybe after a day's work, is your own coping mechanisms. And with coping mechanisms, I mean, what can you do to relieve stress for yourself? And everybody has different ways of coping with stress. Some people like to make music. Some people like to pray. Some people like to sing. Some people like to do sports. Some people like to go out with friends. Some people like to read a book. Some people like to go and sleep. So there's so many different ways of dealing with stress. And what I really had to learn is to be more flexible in that, because okay, I know here from the Netherlands, where I am right now, the situation is it's a privileged situation, right? There's a lot of stress in the world, but here in the Netherlands, at this point, it's safe enough to do the coping things that I want to do. So I can deal with my emotions in a quite safe way. But I've also worked with NGOs like Doctors Without Borders. I already saw some people from Doctors Without Borders also in the participants. For example, where you are in a conflict situation and you cannot do everything that you usually do at home to deal with stress because the situation is not safe enough. And then you have to find your own ways of, or different ways to cope with stress. So I would like to ask you, I don't know if that's possible, but maybe in the chat, if you have any coping mechanisms that you usually do that help you to relieve stress, and maybe the things that you do can also inspire others. So maybe it's possible to write it in the chat, or maybe there is even I don't know, I'm asking the technical support. Maybe there's even a whiteboard that we can use so people can write things down. Yoga. There it goes. Perfect. Yoga, walking in the park. Yes. Walking. Dancing. Painting by number. Pets. Yes. Nature. Movies. Go out in the park. Coffee. Yes. Here I need translation. Cooking.
Chocolate, yoga, knitting, watching the skies, riding bicycle, box, hot tea, scrapbooking, embroidery,
Nice.
going to the mountains, fishing,
Running.
mountains,
Oh yeah. Film.
reading,
Nature.
sex,
Sex. Yes. Mindfulness.
seaside, family, walking, books, fantasy books,
Music. Pray. Walk. Time with family.
spending time in silence for an hour, for instance.
Oh wow. Yeah. Yes. Wow. So many good suggestions and so many wonderful coping mechanisms. Boxing as well. Yeah. Quiet alone time. Yeah. This is wonderful. So many suggestions. I think we can go on the whole day with this. This is wonderful. Maybe there's also, what is that? What is mope?
Sea,
Oh,
seaside.
seaside. Oh, sea. It looks like mope, but it's sea. Nice. See, thank you. Yes, so many good suggestions. That's wonderful. I'm really, really happy to hear all this. And also the yoga. It's nice to see that yoga is also something that you do. Breathing, silence, but also nature. I'm really happy to hear that nature is still always so helpful and always there for us to remind us of where we come from. That's beautiful. Yes, so there's so many options. That's great. So what I would like to ask you before the break is the next slide, which is some sort of personal doctor's prescription, which is meant for staying in good health. It's for your own, it's just for yourself. And maybe you can write it down for yourself or reflect on it for a couple of minutes during the break. That there are some things that you can do to stay in good mental condition. So the things that you know that you can do. And actually those are the things that you've just written down and suggested. And maybe there are some suggestions from others that you've read right now and you think, oh yes, I'm going to try that as well. I've never done that, but I'm going to try that as well. And then the second question is, I noticed that I'm going out of my window of tolerance when I am, so that you have some sort of signals for yourself, like, when I do this, I notice that I'm out of my window. Or when I start doing this, I'm not doing so well. I need to take more care of myself. For me, for example, that means that if I skip my yoga in the morning, I do yoga every morning, but if I skip it in the morning, it means I'm too busy. And then I think, no, I'll just skip it. I'll do other things. But then I skip my self-care and I know now I'm going out of my self-care mode. So that is a sign. And other signs I have, for example, is that I withdraw. So I close the door of my office. I don't talk to people around me because I need to stay focused. But if I do that too much, it already means that I'm actually too stressed. So everyone has their own signs. Some people get easily annoyed. Other people notice that they want to drink more alcohol, for example, or other people notice that they come home later and later and spend less time with their families. So maybe you have your own signals that you know, okay, now I'm going out of my window. And then the last question is, when I'm out of the window, what can I do to get back into it? And that is more, so the first question is more, how can I maintain it with all the coping that you have? But if you're out of your window, what can you do? Like spending time in silence or opening the door, talk to someone, peer support. Yes. So maybe we can keep this slide up for during the break and maybe use now some moments to ask questions for a couple of minutes and then have the break and take these questions into it. Is that an idea? Does anyone have a question? I know there was already a question somewhere, but I don't know if that is already answered. I see a question.
The question is, how can we temporarily expand our window of tolerance?
You can't. So that's uh, not really temporarily. So the point is everyone has their own window of tolerance, and that window of tolerance is kind of a fixed thing, but it's different for everyone. So some people have a smaller window of tolerance, other people have a very broad window of tolerance. That is individually. So if you have a broader one, it is easier, of course. If you have a smaller one, you need more techniques to make sure that you stay in between. Um, but so you cannot really expand the window of tolerance, but the only thing you can do is make sure that when you notice that you're going out, and the best thing would be not when you're already out, but just a little bit before, to do something like breathing or distracting yourself for a second or taking a break, saying literally, sorry, I need a little break for a moment to go back in that window. There was a very interesting question. What is the question? I see from Anastasia. Here's a very interesting question. Oh. Here I see Sami, who has written the same as before. I think an important point that after nearly 3 years of working in Ukraine, I'm still learning that managing sensitive topics, emotions in Ukrainian culture, especially for a certain generation, is unique. I mean, will we mention the universality of some of the skills versus the uniqueness of the Ukrainian culture, as every other culture is unique as well? Yes, that's a very good point. Thank you, Sami, for this point. Yes, of course, we will go into the in the next topic. We will go into what are sensitive topics really, actually, and also about what is it, when is it a taboo, or when is it what can we talk about and what can we not talk about, and how is that culturally appropriate? Yes, absolutely. If I mean, you don't want to force anyone into talking about things that are culturally inappropriate, of course. But sometimes if you have the feeling that it might be helpful, then it can be a topic as well to talk about the fact that it's maybe for a certain generation not the way to deal with things. And then I really think, okay, there is a difference if you have time, of course. If you don't have a lot of time, there is not enough time to actually build on a relationship of trust and to talk about this in extensively. But for example, what we have here is a lot of people who are suffering from traumatic grief. They have lost people in a very traumatic way. And what we know is that it helps to talk about all aspects of the person that has lost their lives to deal with this grief. But in many cultures, you're not supposed to talk about people who have already died after their death. So then it's really important to be aware of that and to go into this exchange again, like we did before, to see if this is this something that we can talk about. Can I ask you questions about that or not? And if not, then leave the control to the other person. Yeah. Thank you, Sami. I don't know if that has answered your question. Thank you. I see here a question I don't think we have from Bodana. Have we?
Yeah, this is a list of suggestions of what we can do to cope with stress.
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
There's Sami. Hi.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for answering. It's it's partially answered. Of course, it's generic, and because every single case is unique. But this is what I'm still learning as a foreigner or as somebody coming from outside, is that some of the things that I thought are useful are not useful, even though it's still puzzling me and some of our colleagues, especially with grief and loss, is that
Yes.
the way we think it would be helpful is not perceived as helpful. And what we think is in other cultures offensive, for instance, or not useful, is very helpful and useful.
Aha.
So I'm still learning that practical things is a priority number one in Ukrainian culture in some generations.
Okay.
Like, for instance, helping somebody by giving money and doing things that are practical is
Yes.
way well perceived compared to just talking or doing emotional support, as I
Yes.
think it would be helpful. And I've been there. And then when new colleagues come and something happens, they start thinking, okay, let's do this and that, and tell them, no, it didn't work last time.
Yeah.
But we cannot help it. We would like to do it as we think is useful.
Yeah.
And that's why I asked about the universality of some things
Yes.
versus uniqueness of cultures, and how some universal ideas,
Yes.
even if they are evidence based, sometimes are not well perceived generally, or for some generations or
Yes.
some cultures. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I find that actually the biggest puzzle of our work at the moment. So I have that, of course, for you, I can imagine now being in Ukraine and dealing with Ukrainian culture. You learn every day for what is helpful for people, what is not helpful, and what you think is helpful is not, and other way around. And I have that also, that puzzle here with the people that we see here. Of course, people come to the Netherlands, but they come from everywhere. And yeah, then I also every time have to puzzle. This is something that we in the Netherlands would do. Is that helpful for you? Not. What would be helpful? And sometimes I struggle with it as well. That I think, okay, I think this might be helpful, but is it really helpful or not? So yes, it's a very important topic, and I think I think we, as in the world universally, we should talk about that way more and respect individual or cultural differences in that, and learn from each other. Yes, yeah, absolutely. So thank you for that important point. Okay, I would like to propose a little break to make sure that our mental health stays well and we go back into the window of tolerance. We don't fall asleep or we don't jump out of it out of stress. So maybe what would be good, like a 5-minute break to go stand up, get yourself something to drink maybe, or go to the toilet or anything. And then we'll meet back at, for you, it's, I think, about 12:20. Yeah, it's a little bit more than 5 minutes. It's 8 minutes. 12:20. Okay. So welcome back, everybody. I hope that everybody had a small break, a time to stretch their legs, move a little bit, and get back here behind the computer to go for the next phase of this webinar. And I really like the question that Anastasia has just written down in the chat. And she said she liked that this part, the first part, is about self-care, and that self-care is not a very popular topic amongst health care providers or care providers. They usually want to do more things, technical support to benefit the beneficiaries, which is interesting, and maybe also one of the cultural aspects that we just talked about. But of course, it's easier to talk about other people, and it's easier to make sure that you focus on the other instead of focusing on yourself, because, well, very often it's even one of the reasons why people like to help other people is that they can focus on the other, not on themselves. So yes, it is. It's a very important topic and not so popular often. I have to say we did not do this on purpose to say, well, it's about sensitive topics and suddenly it's about self-care. I really think the one cannot go without the other. So that's why it came up together. But it's interesting to see how you can promote it. I know that there is this movement at the moment where the care for caregivers is getting bigger and bigger. So there are a lot of organizations that set up these on an organizational level, set up things to make sure that the caregiver is being cared for, to make sure that they can keep giving care. But yes, I think it's about addressing the topic also to the hierarchy in the organization, make sure that it has been given to everyone to show the importance of it. I don't know if you have to trap people into coming to these kinds of sessions, but I really think to underscore the importance of it, to underline it, I think it's important. Yes. Yeah, thank you, Anastasia. So we continue now with the next slide and the next part of our webinar, which is vicarious trauma, which is kind of a bridge from what Anastasia is telling us, because vicarious trauma can happen at the moment that you listen to traumatic stories from other people for a very long time. And what does it mean, vicarious trauma? It kind of means that you get traumatic symptoms or post-traumatic stress symptoms from having images in your mind from things that people have told you. It happens, for example, to policemen who do police work in sexual offenders police work, and they have to look at videos a lot, and they get traumatized by looking at those videos, even though they're not the victim themselves. But by looking at those videos, you can get victimized by seeing things that are so horrific. And it's the same with listening to these stories. And it's important to know the symptoms, to recognize them, and to seek help when you realize that you have these symptoms, because it's important to stay healthy yourself, as we already discussed in the first hour. So the symptoms of vicarious trauma on the next slide are similar to the post-traumatic stress symptoms that you might already know. It can happen that you have intrusions about the things that you've heard. So you see images or you see videos in your mind of things that you have been hearing. It can also be cognitive changes, that you look at the world differently, or you feel more numb towards the world because you think that the world is not a great place, or you cannot see any hopeful things anymore. For example, I work in a team of expertise that focuses on victims of human trafficking. That's one of the teams that I'm working in. And if you see so many victims of sexual violence, so many victims of human trafficking, then you start to look at the world also in a different way, and see people who do harm more and think, why is this world like this, right? Why can we not do anything to prevent this? So it can give a changed worldview as well, that you think the world is a horrible place to be, which is not. I mean, there are a lot of places in the world right now that are very, very difficult to be. So it can also mean that you have a more realistic view of the world, but it's not always easy to live with. Yes. The other thing is compassion fatigue, which means that you can get tired of trying to be empathetic with people. To hear again a story that is traumatic, that it's hard to be empathetic and to say, okay, yes, I hear you. Again, such a story. So you get a bit numb, and what I notice, for example, for me, is that after a day of talking to clients or patients who have been telling me their traumatic stories the whole day, when I come home, I don't have any energy left to talk to friends. So if there's a friend in need and she calls me or he calls me and wants to talk about something, then I can really sometimes feel, not now. I have been talking to someone, to people the whole day. I don't have any energy left to listen, which is of course sad, because it means that I cannot be there for the people I love so much, because I already have given so much during the day. That is what you call compassion fatigue. Then you can also have physical complaints. So pain in the back pain, pain in the shoulders, in the neck, headaches, stomach problems. That can all be caused by the stress that you can get from listening to these stories. The other thing is hypervigilance, that you get scared easily. You get startled easily. So when you hear a loud noise or someone is knocking at the door, that you suddenly feel that you get startled. In many cultures, you have all kinds of different ways of attributing to that. In the Netherlands, we often say that if you get startled easily when someone comes in, that means that you have something to hide. I don't think it's true, but it does mean that your stress level is high, and that you are attentive, that your body is constantly in a state of making sure, that there can be danger somewhere, so I have to be attentive. That's the hypervigilance part. And then you have avoidance, not wanting to listen or see or hear anything that has got to do with the things that you have been hearing already. I don't know how that is with you, but I cannot watch any violent movies anymore. I don't even understand why I could see any movies with violence in it when I was younger. But ever since I've been hearing all the violence and seeing and hearing the violence that actually happens in the world, I cannot look at it anymore on a screen. So that is one of the things that I try to avoid, not to have too much violence outside work again on my on my screen or in movies. I try to watch, simple movies or happy movies or documentaries from nature. So that is, if you recognize these symptoms, there might be post-traumatic stress because of something that you've been through in the past yourself, but it also might be caused by listening to many detailed stories from people. And if you notice, then it's important to find help. So to go and find peer support, talk to colleagues about it or someone else that you trust. And even if possible, if you really have traumatic symptoms, then go and seek professional help. Because it's really important that you stay healthy yourself. I cannot underline that enough during this webinar. So that is what is vicarious trauma. So that is the last stretch on how to make sure that you take good care of yourself before going into a sensitive topic. And now the next part is about sensitive topics, or more about how to respond when a beneficiary is reacting in a certain way. And what I would like to ask you before going into that is, what is a sensitive topic to you? So what is what are subjects that you try to avoid in conversations with the beneficiaries you talk to, for example? Or what's kind of a taboo to talk about? Maybe you can put it in the chat if you have any ideas. So that's not yet about the slide that you see, but it's more like I'm just wondering, if you have a conversation with someone, what are the topics that are difficult to talk about? And it might be difficult because you don't want to talk about it. Yes, loss of loved ones. Grief. Yeah, that's a very good example. Conflict-related sexual violence. Yes. Loss of children. Absolutely.
Rape.
Rape. Yes, something that has triggered me because I had experience as well. Absolutely, yes. Sexual violence. Yeah. Yeah, so what I see is loss of loved ones, of children, and rape, sexual violence, or things that have happened to you as well. So triggers, torture, yes, captivity, occupation experiences.
There are no topics I am not comfortable discussing. This is my work and this is the help that people need.
Okay, that is wonderful if you feel that you have no boundaries and that you can talk about anything. Yeah. Yeah. So yes, there are so many topics that can be very difficult to discuss. And of course, if it's in your line of work, so if it is your work to ask what has happened to you, can you tell me what has happened? Then the strategy should be that you make sure that you can handle it when people talk about it, of course. But it can also be that you have work in which talking about these topics comes sideways. For example, I don't know, people come to you for help for financial problems, maybe. And then at the same time, they say, because I was raped and this happened to me, or sexual violence, or I lost all my loved ones and now I don't have any money left. Or so it can also come up sideways, and then you might be surprised by it. Um, and of course, when people talk about something that has happened to you yourself, then it is triggering. Then it can then happens a little bit what we saw in the sympathy empathy fusion part, is that it's easy when someone talks about something that happened to you as well, that you feel the same emotions, or it just comes rushing into your body as if it's happening to you at the same time. So you need more protection suit in order to talk about it, or to also know your limits and to say, I'm sorry, I understand you want to talk about this right now, but I am not the right person to talk to about this subject. That might be a possibility as well. So we are going to talk about what you might do, or what you can do at the moment that someone is really, really emotional. And the first one is already on the slide. It says sharing painful memories. And the thing is, the first question to ask yourself is this the right time and place for it? What I was just saying. Is this my work? Is this the right place and time to talk about this? For example, sometimes I have someone here. We talk to people 1.5 hours sometimes, and then then there's the next person. And sometimes someone starts to talk about something 3 minutes before the end of the session. So we've had 1.5 hours to talk about something, and then in the last 3 minutes someone opens up about something, and then I know already I don't have the space and time at that moment to fully listen to what the person wants to say. And then I can say, I really appreciate that you talk about this now, and I really want to hear more about it. But at this time, we don't have enough time to really listen to it with all my attention. So I suggest we make a new appointment for that. For example, so ask yourself, is this the right time and place? If not, try to limit someone a little bit, because otherwise someone really feels like he or she can talk about it extensively without you having the space in your mind to really listen to it. And then it's out there in the open, and people well, then it just stays there, and it's the reaction or the way you respond to people sharing something is really important. So if you listen to it with half an ear, then yeah, that can be difficult for the person to see as well. But if you do have time, so if you realize, okay, this is the time and place, I can listen to someone's story at this point, and it is also my job, or it's part of what I do, then listen, and try to listen as much as possible. Not give any advices, or not yet. Just listen to what someone is saying, so someone can actually let it out, because sometimes it's the first time people talk about it. Sometimes it's so scary to say something about it, then just to have a listening ear is very important. And then what you can do is validate. And validate means, I understand that this is very, very difficult for you, or I understand that you're sad, or I understand that you're angry. And with this, I am also curious to see if that is indeed what is helpful within the Ukrainian culture, or that people need more practical advice. But I think to have to know as a victim of something, to know that your feelings are completely logical and are allowed to be there, I think is really important. And then be explicit to what you can do or what you cannot do. So if you are a mental health worker and you say we can talk about this several times, then you can talk about it several times. If you say what I can do is refer you when someone says he or she has been a victim of sexual violence, say I can refer you to a medical specialist if needed, or I can refer you to someone you to talk to. Be explicit about your role, about what it is that you can do. And sometimes you can feel that when people are talking about what they have been through, you can feel like you're the only one who can help them, and you have to listen to them, and you even have to, well, maybe you even feel the need to give your phone number so that you can say, well, you can call me anytime, but you really need to make sure you have your boundaries as well, and be clear to what you can do and not do. Also, when people are talking, so sometimes it can be very helpful if people talk about what they've been through and they talk about it just in general. Talking about what happened in very much detail is usually mostly helpful if there is really a conversation that is about dealing with a traumatic event, like with a psychologist or mental health worker, or in a group session. But talking about too many details usually is also a way for people not knowing how to stop. So when it comes out, and people talk about it, and they don't have that boundary or limit anymore. They don't feel it anymore. And then it can be helpful to limit the details, to say, I really want to listen to what you're saying, but this is not the time or place to go into too much detail. So maybe you can talk about it globally for me, if possible. Also, in order to protect yourself. What we see, for example, here in our work is that if you listen to someone, and from your work perspective, you're listening because you have ideas of what you have to do later or how you can help someone, you listen to someone's story already digesting it also in your mind. But if for example, if we have an intern who who goes with us and is also present at the conversation, but the intern doesn't have a certain task, then the story comes in a passive way to you. So someone is talking about details and it comes to you in a passive way, then it's way more overwhelming. So in that sense, it's really important to find for yourself, is this the right place and time to hear the details? And if not, try to limit it in a very friendly way, or and say that you cannot listen to all the details right now. So that is when people are sharing painful stories. When you notice it is affecting yourself too much, go back to what we talked about in the first half of this webinar. So go back to the breathing, go back to the bubble, imagining the bubble, and make sure that the story stays with the person that is talking. Yeah. On the next slide, we talk about how to react if someone is reliving. The presentation is missing. Are you no longer seeing the slides? Or okay. Do you see the next slide now? Yes. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. So the next one is how to deal when someone is reliving the traumatic event. I don't know if you've ever seen that happen. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't, maybe you've had that yourself. But one thing is talking about a memory, of course, talking about the details that happened. But sometimes people can actually relive the traumatic event as if it is happening now. So that means, for example, I've had people here in my office hiding under the table because of bombing, or people who are looking at their arms and see that it's completely in blood, and they smell the blood, they see the blood, it's completely covered in what happened then, even though I don't see the blood and I don't smell it. So it's reliving the situation as if it is happening right now, with all the details and the smells and the things that are coming back to them. If that happens, you want people to get in the here and now as fast as possible, because, well, nobody is benefiting from reliving a traumatic event again. And to get people back to the here and now, you can use all kinds of tools. For example, speak clearly. Make sure you are audible, because you have to be audible in between all the other things that someone is hearing. So if someone is reliving a bombing situation, for example, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of bombing in their minds and heads, so you have to go through it with your voice to make sure that they can hear you. Give people a little bit of time to come back. Say where they are. You are now here with me in this office. It is today, the 21st of August. So try to help someone go back to the here and now. And try not to touch anyone. When someone is reliving a traumatic event, and especially when it comes to traumatic events that have been caused by other people, like sexual violence, for example, if you touch someone, it might feel like you are the perpetrator. So it might come across wrong, and people get really, really scared. So never touch anyone without anyone's permission. I've had someone who went into these flashbacks often during therapy sessions, and then we made this agreement, because the only way to get out for him was if I could hold his hand. And so we made this agreement that if it happens, I tell you, okay, you are now in a flashback. I'm going to hold your hand because you want to come out. So you explain it, what you're doing, but then it's already, it's an agreement up beforehand. Never do that just out of nowhere. Yeah. And then validate afterwards. Make sure that you say, yes, this has been having you heavy. You have been reliving it again. It must be very scary. You're back here now. And then maybe offer some water to drink, if possible, if available, and give some time before you move on. We also have cues here for if it happens. So we have, it's behind the desk, so I cannot really show it to you, but because we have these balls that are sticky, or not sticky, like pointy. So if you give it to someone while talking, it might prevent someone from going into the past, because someone is constantly giving himself input, to sensitive input, to make sure that that you stay in the present. And I also have smell that is very strong. Maybe you know the tiger balm smell, for example. Tiger balm is really very very strong smell. And sometimes if I make this agreement up front with people, I use the smell for people to get back in the here and now. So that if someone is reliving a traumatic event, and you don't want people to relive it, because yeah, it It's painful. So you prefer people to talk about it than to relive it. Yes. Although don't feel bad about it if it happens. It's not your fault. It's important to say, I think. If people relive the traumatic events from what they have been through, it happens very often. Also at home, it happens, or during the night, it happens. So it is something that happens to them very often, and it might also happen in your office. Yeah. Then the next one is dissociation. It's the next slide. And when and dissociation means maybe you've already heard in other webinars as well, but with dissociation you will go out of the present moment, and people seem absent. So you keep talking to people, but they don't listen to you anymore, or they seem not to look at you anymore, or they seem absent, as if their mind is somewhere else. Sometimes they even fall asleep. That can be dissociation as well. And that happens if people go out of their window of tolerance. So if they fall asleep, they're underneath the window of tolerance. If they look at you or they look at a certain point, but they're not there with their minds, they're out of the window of tolerance on the higher level. And also then what you want is to bring people back to the here and now, bring them back in the window of tolerance by doing the same things that have been written down with reliving the traumatic event. So focusing on the here and now. Sometimes you can ask, like, look around you in this room. What are 5 things that you can see? What are 5 things you can hear? What are 5 things you can smell or feel? So make sure that people use their senses to go back in the here and now. Because if you focus on what do I smell right now here, what I see right now here, then you are automatically here in the here and now. So the same things when someone dissociates as when someone has a flashback. Try to get someone back in the here and now. Then the next one is when someone starts crying a lot. Because someone is really, really sad. My idea would be to see, well, to let someone cry. But I mean, is this the right place and time? Is this the right place for someone to cry? So if someone is standing in line, and there's a huge waiting line behind, and you have to offer help to a lot of people who are coming there for certain reasons, then if someone goes and stands there and cries extensively, it can be maybe difficult. So then it could be good to limit it and say, I understand that you're very, very sad, but I cannot hear you well if you are crying like this. So maybe calm down first, and then we can talk a little bit more. But if someone is crying because someone is really, really sad and you have the time and space, I would say let someone cry, because it can be very relieving as well. When someone is crying a lot, you don't have to talk much. I don't know if that is culturally appropriate, but usually if someone is crying a lot, you can just to be there, to be present and let someone cry and just let it out is already okay. Sometimes people feel comfortable if you tell them it's going to be okay, or don't worry, you will be fine, it will pass. I'm not so, I don't have the tendency to do all those things because I don't know if it's going to be fine, and I don't know if things will turn out well or not. But I can say it's fine to cry. It's okay to be sad. But in some cultures or some people really find it helpful to have this counseling of it's going to be okay, this hope that it's going to be okay. So that is an option. if you have the feeling that, because usually if people cry and it comes out and it's out, it's out. It's sort of like a balloon. If you blow up a balloon, you have this big balloon and you just let it out, let the air out slowly because of crying, then at a certain moment the balloon is empty. And so the crying, it was out and it was very, very helpful. But what sometimes happens is that people cry and they keep rethinking the same thought. And the same thought is making them cry again. So they are in loops, in circles. Then it can be very helpful to at a certain point say, well, it's good that you let out all the sadness. Let's see how we can move on from here. So what can we do to make sure you get out of this office in a good way? And then maybe try to distract someone or try to focus on more solutions if possible. And of course, when we talk about grief or loss of children or loss of loved ones, the grief will not be, it will not be over if someone has been crying. Absolutely not. It's going to take years and years and years and maybe the rest of their lives to deal with a loss like that or losses like that. But still, that doesn't mean that you have to be crying or have to feel the pain always every time the same amount of way. So then it can be helpful to also focus on, okay, with this grief that you have right now, with the pain that you're feeling right now, how can we make sure you leave this office in a most beneficial way? Yeah. And then we are at crying. I don't know if that is the same. No, I think when it's, yeah, exactly. Thank you. So that is the crying part. And then I wanted to go further to the angry part. So that is even the next slide, please. Thank you. So you can also have when people become really, really angry at you or angry. And then you have two types of angriness, actually. So you have an angry that is in general, people who are angry at the world or angry at something that is happening. And you have people who are angry at you specifically. And those things are really, really different situations. And also you have to deal with them differently, I think. Because if someone is really, really angry and frustrated about a lot of things, I think it's helpful to let someone ventilate. Vent, is that the word in I don't know, in English? So let the air come out like the balloon that you have with crying as well. So if someone is frustrated about what is happening in the world or about the organization or anything, then you can say, yes, it's very frustrating. What else are you frustrated about? Or tell me, yes, go on. What else are you frustrated about? So let it all out, because then someone calms down eventually. It will help. Even though it can be very impressive as well. And it's also good to know that what are the emotions that you yourself feel comfortable with. For example, crying. I don't mind crying myself. I don't find sadness a difficult emotion. I think, yeah, it's part of life and it should be there. It's the same with fear, joy. But when it comes to anger, I find it more difficult. Of course, it should be there. It's the same with all the other emotions, but anger is something in me that I find difficult to feel when I get angry, and I can also be very impressed if someone else gets very angry at me. So it's good to feel also, or to know that from yourself. Okay, now this is impressive. But people, if you notice that the anger is not aimed at you, then you can let it just come out. But if the anger is aimed at you, if someone is really being angry at you specifically, individually, then you have to limit the conversation. You have to set boundaries immediately. So for example, if someone says, if you don't do this for me, I will, I don't know, I will do something, or I will set this place on fire, or I will do something like that. Then you really set boundary immediately. Say, I don't want to talk to you in this way. So we stop this conversation now. You have two options. Either you calm down and we talk about the things that you want to talk about calmly, or we end this conversation and you walk out of here. Because you cannot talk to someone if you are being threatened. You cannot, because then you're out of the window of tolerance, and then you don't have a relationship in which you can actually talk. So if someone really aims the anger at you, I think it's really, really important to set boundaries immediately and say, okay, this is not the way we talk to each other. And so there are two things we can do. We either continue or you stop now. It stops here. And yeah, set that boundary. I don't know if that's something that you recognize in your work. People get really, really angry. And sometimes they can get really angry about something that you cannot do anything about, right? So many people are asking for something or want something or they need something, and you see that they need it, but you cannot give it because you're not, it's not within your possibilities or within your lines of work. So it can feel very, very powerless or difficult. So if someone is aiming anger at you, say stop, give options, and then also follow the consequences if needed. If you say, this is too much, or if you say, I'm going to stop this conversation, make sure you stop the conversation and don't continue afterwards. Yeah. Yeah, so that is about when people get really, really angry. Do you know from yourself what emotion you find most difficult? Or maybe you find all emotions equally easy to deal with. Maybe you find for yourself, right? You don't have to write it down in the chat if you don't want to, because it's a personal question. But I think it might be very helpful to know for yourself. I find grief very hard for myself if my own grieving or my own anger or my own sadness or my own joy or my own fear. To know a little bit what is the emotion that I feel most uncomfortable with. Because, yes, Irina, there's a question.
Так, це не зовсім питання. Маємо якраз в чаті
It's
один коментар.
not a question, but that's exactly the comment about difficult emotions in the chat. So Irina is saying that it's difficult for her to accept when the person believes they are doing good and doing so much for others, but others are just not hearing them, not seeing them. So, like for instance, in the relationship between a grandmother and her grandchildren during the war.
Yes. So what do you mean then? That they don't recognize each other's emotions, or they don't see each other anymore because they are overwhelmed with emotions?
Ірина, можливо, ви б хотіли озвучити своє питання точніше?
Yeah, let's maybe hear from Irina. Maybe she can share more detail with us.
Mm-hmm.
Але гадаю, так, пов'язано скоріше питання з тим, що
I believe, yeah, the question is more about having the different understanding of emotions within the same family. And, well, Irina could use the mic and actually explain the question in more detail.
Mm-hmm. It's a different Irina, I imagine.
Yeah, Jana is saying when a person is blaming me when I cannot address her issue. Yeah, so that's one more comment. And Irina, who was asking the question, cannot switch on her microphone.
Oh, okay. Yes, absolutely. So in what I understand from the comment is that there is a big difference in how people relate to emotions, and how also within one family people relate to emotions, and especially when it comes to dealing with traumatic events within with that you can have a whole webinar about that within a family or within a system, because everybody is dealing with a traumatic event in a different way. So when it comes to grief, for example, if someone dies within a family, everyone within the family deals with it differently. And people might have their own history, a family history of dealing with emotions, or learned how to deal with emotions. Um, and that goes from generation into generation. If I look, for example, at my grandparents who have been through war, they have learned not to talk about anything about the war. So they kept silent, which means that they taught their children to not talk about difficult things and difficult subjects at all, which means that things are maybe boiling up inside people and they don't feel very comfortable talking about it. But then a generation after it, that's my generation, you feel that people want to be able to speak out that what is not named, or talk about things that have been secret for a long time, or they feel so many feelings but there are no words for it. So there is this tendency to want to speak about it or to talk about it, to open up things, which is difficult if you have for generations not learned how to do that. And also within cultures within the country, right? So you might see also a difference with people growing up in the city that have a different way of dealing with emotions than people growing up in the countryside, vice versa. So yes, there's a big difference in dealing with emotions. And when you talk to someone privately, or in a system when the whole family is there, it can be very difficult if people see it in a different way or deal with it in a different way. I do think still that emotions are there always as a signal of something. So we don't have emotions for nothing. That would be silly to be living with all kinds of emotions without any purpose. So every emotion is telling us something. And when it comes to sadness and grief, it means we've lost something. It can be loss of a loved one, of course, but can also be loss of a job, loss of a relationship after a breakup. It can be um, loss of a pet. It can be loss of status. If you have been working in your country of origin for as in a certain function or a certain job, and then you go to a different country and you are losing that job, or anything that you lose causes sadness. So it's a signal that you've lost something, and I think it can be recognized. It is supposed to be recognized. And the same goes for anger. Anger means someone is stepping over something, or someone is stepping over your boundaries. And then anger comes up. With fear, it is that someone is threatening your feeling of safety. So every emotion signifies something, means something. And I really think that at least recognizing it and acknowledging the feeling helps the feeling to settle. And I sometimes have to think about this. I'll come back to the balloon. If you have a balloon and you put it underwater, you try to put it underwater because you don't want to feel it, you don't want to recognize, you don't want to acknowledge it. So you try to pull it under the water. There's a big, it takes a lot of energy because you have to use all your strength to keep it under the water. The balloon wants to come up. And if for a second, split second, you don't pay attention, then you leave it and then it pops up, it goes up because it has been wanting to go out for such a long time. Well, if you can let it go and acknowledge it step by step, you don't have to put so much effort into avoiding it or putting it away. And it opens up a lot of possibilities. Another example is when children want something. If you have a very young child, 2, 3 years old, and it wants something, and you don't listen to it because you think, yeah, well, you can want it, but you cannot get it. So, and it's not convenient at the moment, so you don't listen it because you're doing groceries and it's not the right time for the child to ask for something. What the child usually does is start screaming. So a child starts asking for it more. Please, can I have it? I want it. And if it's not acknowledged, the child starts screaming, maybe even lying on the floor or saying, I want this, I want it now. Because that's what children do if they are not acknowledged, if their feelings are not acknowledged. And I think, well, acknowledging it, that doesn't mean you have to give it, but by acknowledging, I see that you want this, I can understand that you really want this very badly. Unfortunately, you cannot get it today. But then acknowledge that that's sad for someone or that's a loss. I think it can really, really be helpful. And explain that also to family members if you see that someone is really wanting to talk about it, but someone else of the family is not, then to try to explain the benefits of talking about emotions. Yes, I think Irina now has raised her hand.
Добрий день. Я хотіла уточнити просто свій коментар.
Hello. Yeah, I would like to explain my comment. There is sometimes the over-demanding approach in the taking care of children. Sometimes the child behaves quite adequately, but the grandmother does not hear the child and just wants the child to calm down. And they are sort of do not hear each other. And especially if during the war, sometimes the communication is limited with online only and the time is limited, etc. So the adults in the family sometimes lack this connection, the exchange of feedback with children. Yeah, the adults may be experiencing their own trauma, and especially well, even if I just have a short form conversation with a person, I understand that I'm limited in what I can do, but still I have the feeling later that I failed to help the person.
Yeah. Thank you, Irina, for commenting, for explaining what you meant. Yes, I think it's very understandable that probably many people during the war are outside their window of tolerance the whole time, right? Because it's an unsafe situation and there's danger the whole time and there's loss the whole time, there's trauma the whole time. So I can imagine that people are outside their window the whole time, and then you don't have this capability of listening to someone else or having even to know what the other person wants or to place yourself in the shoes of someone else. That is really, really difficult. And I also think that affects a whole generation of children that that grow up in this unsafe situation with people outside of their windows of tolerance, which is completely logical, no one to blame. But I really think it's, for a lot of children, it's very hard. And if you have such a conversation online, you don't have a lot of time, I think what might help to focus on is to see if you can get someone just for a couple of minutes to get back into the window of tolerance. I sometimes think I use this example sometimes of a cup. If you hold a cup, this is my teacup. This is not very heavy, but I'm holding it like this, and yeah, I can hold it for quite some time. But at a certain point, even though the cup is not getting any heavier, my muscles are getting tired, right? So because yeah, you have to keep this the whole time at a certain point. And if I keep this for a whole day, then I really, really get tired. I cannot think of other things anymore. I get annoyed because I keep holding this and this is really, really painful. So my muscles get really painful and I cannot focus. If someone asks me, can you do this for me? I think, what? I am holding this cup right now. You know, I cannot do anything for you extra. So the same burden is getting heavier and heavier and heavier if you have to keep it up the whole time. So the point is, or what can be very, very helpful for anyone in life, is to have the possibility to just for 5 minutes, put the cup down, get your arms and your muscles to relax for a second in order to afterwards be able to pick up the cup again. Well, there it is, cup again. And I think that is what counts for a situation of conflict and war as well. Of course, it's not possible to put your cup down or to put the conflicts down or the loss and the trauma and the grief down because it's always there and it becomes heavier and heavier. The longer the situation lingers, the longer the more heavier it becomes to bear it. But I do think that if we can give our system small breaks of just a couple of minutes a day, a couple of moments in the day with breathing exercises or with yoga, the things that you have been mentioning right now, which are amazing, if you can do that, if you can give that offer, that present to people that you talk to for just a few minutes, it can already be very, very helpful. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if that matches anything of what you said, but yeah, it is very, very complicated when the conflict continues and you have to deal with it day by day. Yeah, find these small moments of relaxation in between. And then I also saw from Jana the question, what happens, what is difficult when someone is actually blaming you specifically, right? If someone wants something and he or she says, I'm not getting it because of you. Yeah, that is painful, right? So first of all, acknowledge for yourself that it's really painful if someone is actually blaming you for something that you don't have influence on. And then I would really limit it or set boundaries and say, I understand that you're really, really disappointed, but there's nothing I can do about it, and I don't accept you blaming me for it. We are all doing our best right here. So I would kind of set a boundary there. And maybe sometimes it's enough to say, I understand it's disappointing, I'm really sorry. But if someone doesn't and is not capable of seeing that it's not your fault or it's not something that you can do about it, then mention it. Because people can, I do think we can empathize with people very, very long time, and we can understand that people go through very, very difficult times and it's hard, but it doesn't give them the right to harm others, right? I never think that going through trauma is a reason to harm others. So when you feel you're being harmed by remarks people make, you can set boundaries. I believe so. Yeah. I don't know if that does answer your question, Jana. Are there any other questions at this point, now that we're talking about questions anyway? Tak. I don't know if you say tak, but it sounds like tak. Tak is it's also Swedish, isn't it? Tak. So, thank you. Nice. I'm learning a bit of Ukrainian here. Yeah, so if there are not any questions at this point, we can go on to the next slide, which is about dealing with our own emotions. And dealing with our own emotions is just as hard as dealing with other people's emotions. Maybe it's even harder. And I've written down here 2 emotions that can come up that I see here in our practice a lot is feelings of helplessness and hopelessness, or feelings of anger. And it's all these feelings are related to the feeling of powerlessness, or feeling powerless. Then you get to feel helpless, hopeless, or even angry. That's the other side of dealing with powerfulness, right? You can have a day where you have talked to a lot of people, and then you think, who have I really helped today? Of what have I actually done today? People go home, they still have lost their loved ones. They go home, they have just had sexual violence, they gone through a lot of trauma, and they still go home, and what have I actually done for someone? And then you can feel helpless or hopeless, because at the same time, um, um, the horrible things, the atrocities just continue. I can feel that sometimes when we are dealing with conflict-related sexual violence, we see all the people that have made it to the Netherlands and they have gone through sexual violence, and we see them here, and we try to help them, and at the same time we see in all these countries around us that sexual violence is the level of sexual violence is increasing because there's so much conflict, and it's still a weapon of war. So it's going on and on and on. And then I can get so angry sometimes and so powerless that I look at the world and think, how is this the world that we're living in? How can this be the world we're living in? And how can we keep trying to help victims or survivors, while on the other hand, it still continues all the time. So I can feel angry sometimes as well, and helpless and powerless. And then I think it's really, really important to keep focusing on the things that you do influence, and to realize that whatever it is that you're doing is so intensely powerful and important. Even though you think you didn't do anything, the fact that you listened to someone, the fact that you were there, the fact that you wanted to hear someone's story is hugely important. And what I sometimes think, or I realize myself sometimes, is that's why I keep coming back to this self-care, that you cannot help everyone in the world, right? You want to, you try to, but you cannot help everyone. And if you feel helpless and hopeless, and you feel angry, your light, the light that you have shining inside you, it sounds a bit spiritual. That's not how I mean it, but I mean your life force, the way that the force, the energy that keeps you standing up and walking around every day, that also dims. The light will dim if you go along with the helplessness and the hopelessness and the anger that you feel. And I think we can help other people best if we keep shining our lights, right? If we can make sure that our lights keep shining, if we can make sure that we can keep on getting up in the morning, getting our energy back, because then we can help other people. And so I think it is our duty to take care of ourselves, to make sure that we can take care of ourselves so we can help people who need it at this point. And also because maybe at some point there will be a day that you need help, and then you need other people who keep their lights shining, who keep their energy going, who keep taking care of themselves as well as possible because they have the possibilities, and then they can help you. So of course everybody has their own responsibility, but I really do think that our responsibility is to make sure that we keep our energy flowing, and if possible, if the circumstances are there, right? And if the circumstances are not there, because of course it is really, really difficult and sometimes it's impossible, then let someone else shine the light for you for a moment, and let it go for a second. Don't to cut yourself some slack sometimes as well. So to recognize that you feel helpless or hopeless is important. To say, okay, I feel that this is going down now. I feel that I cannot look at things that are happening anymore. I cannot listen to people anymore. I'm done. I'm empty. Or that you feel you get so angry and the anger cannot go anywhere. A little bit of anger is a good thing. You need a little bit of anger to get yourself going, right? If you wake up in the morning, you don't want to go anywhere because it's the situation is really, really hard, then sometimes a little bit of anger can get you to get up anyway, to brush your teeth and to think, okay, I'll go and I'll do this. So a little bit of anger is good, but too much anger is that you cannot point at something or someone is going to eat you up. And there is this mindfulness guru, I could say. His name is Thich Nhat Hanh. Maybe you've known him. He has this book which is called Transforming Anger. And he talks about anger as if it's something that you can digest, like food. If you have food, you take it in, you digest it, and it comes out as, well, mess that you can use for, I don't know, fertilizing plants. And the same you can do with anger. So you can, if you feel that you're really angry, be aware of it and try to digest it to see, okay, there's anger. What can I do with it? Who can I be? Can I direct it at something? If not, how can I use this anger for the good? How can I use this as a motivation to do something? So you don't get stuck with the anger, but you digest it into some sort of, something to fertilize your life with. So that is for the anger. Maybe I'm missing feelings that you have after a day's work or after weeks of work, because now I talk about helplessness and hopelessness and anger, but maybe there's another feeling that you get stuck with after your work. Please let me know in the chat if there is anything you would like reflection on.
And who is the author of the book about transformation of anger?
I don't know if
question. Could you please repeat the name of the author of the book?
I think it was Thich Nhat Hanh. I don't know if I have written it well.
Okay, thank you.
And the book is called Transforming Anger.
Great. And there's also a comment in the chat.
Okay.
About emotions.
Oh yeah, right, in English. I had a period of emotional overload when I was tired of empathy. Yes, even with close people in my private life, I avoided eye contact with people when they told me something about their lives. I don't want to take on their experiences. I did not have the resources to show empathy, and avoiding eye contact seemed to help. Yes. Oh, thank you very much for sharing this, Katarina, because I think a lot of people will recognize this. that it's just too much. You have already too much to bear. It's actually like you are holding this cup of everyone else's experiences already. And then just the idea that someone else might tell you experience of their lives is too much. It's the drop that is going to overload your bucket, right? So yes, I understand that avoiding eye contact then at that point just is helpful. It's also helpful because if you avoid eye contact, you don't have the mirroring part that we talked about in the beginning with the monkeys that you saw on the slide. So if you avoid eye contact, you don't take in the whole story with all the nonverbal signs that someone is giving you. So I understand that it's helpful, and yes, maybe even in the future, if this happens again, you might find a sentence that you can say at that point. You can say, "I'm sorry, I'm already too overloaded with experiences I've heard. I don't have headspace to listen to you. I'm sorry, I don't have it right now." To be clear that you cannot be there for everyone all the time, and to make sure that you can be there for yourself first. Because then self-care, even though it feels super selfless, it is the best thing you can do. The best thing you can do is make sure that your light keeps shining. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. I see another comment. Or is that the name of the author?
Yeah, I think that are the name of the authors.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Is there someone else who would like to share a experience, or to have someone still have a question about what we talked about today? There's some chat coming in. No.
I think there are no questions so far. Probably
Okay.
everyone thinking deeply.
Yes. Yes. So the main message to bring across today, and maybe we stop a little bit earlier. That's possible as well. So the main thing to bring across today is to put yourself first, which is very difficult in a situation where so many people are in need. But the best thing you can do is to stay loyal to yourself first and foremost, and to make sure that you keep standing up. And sometimes it will mean, because the fact that you're all doing this work, and the fact that you're all here to help others, already means that you have so much to offer, and you have the tendency to give, right? You have the tendency to give to other people, which is beautiful, and the world needs you. But you cannot give anything anymore when you're empty, when the battery is low, when you're empty, when you have nothing to offer anymore because you have been exhausted. So even when you think the other person needs it more than I do right now, but you feel that you need something, please listen to yourself, and make sure that you are taking care of yourself in the first place every day again. And I know it's hard, and I notice myself, I have this whole routine to make sure that I stay healthy myself. And still, I'm not in a war situation like you are, so it's a lot easier for me here. But still, I feel myself falling down this trap of being there for others before myself, and constantly I have to remind myself. I even write it down. I have this doctor's prescription that I have given you in halfway of the presentation, also written out for myself, to see the symptoms, to recognize the symptoms, and to make sure that I step back and take care of myself before taking care of others. And I know that the world will be so beautiful, and even more beautiful if you keep your light shining first. That's the most important thing. I see a lot of...
Дякую дуже, Jitske. Так, дуже багато повідомлень з подяками
we
за
get
вебінар,
lots
про
of
приклад,
messages in the chat from
метафори,
people who are grateful
Також
for
маємо
the
ще одне додаткове
presentation, for the
питання.
metaphors
Чи
and
можна
the
було б
practical
більше розповісти про відчуття
steps.
безпорадності?
And
Як
there is
допомогти людині
one
в цьому
question
стані?
here. Can you please tell more about the feeling of helplessness and how can we help a person who is experiencing this?
That is interesting. Yes, because I was talking about the helplessness that you can feel yourself, but your question is about if someone else feels helpless, what can you do about it? Yeah. So I think sometimes if you like practical practical interventions, it can help to make a circle of influence and to see, okay, what is it that you have actually influence on, and what are the things that you don't have influence on? And sometimes it helps to just draw it, to make it like a circle, and then you make as if you are putting it into a cake, and you say, well, this part I don't have any influence on, so then try to let it go, because to keep thinking about something that you have no influence on, it just occupies the mind, it occupies your whole nervous system, and it's a waste of time actually, even though of course it's logical that people think about it. But if you don't have any influence, try to let it go and focus on the little part that you do have influence on, and that can be self-care. It can be focusing on making sure that the family feels okay, or focusing on doing something for yourself, learning something new, or writing something down in a journal if that is available and suitable, or anything that you can focus on for a moment that you can do something with, because feelings of helplessness are there and are logical, and so they need to be acknowledged. But to stay focusing on all those things that you cannot help anything about is going to be exhausting. So try to find something that people can have influence on. Yeah. And sometimes that's even just waking up in the morning and going for a small walk, or if people don't dare to walk on their own anymore, with someone else, or doing some exercises in the morning. It can be making sure that you eat 2 times a day, and that's what you have influence on, or influence on what it is that you eat. So it can be very, very small, but important, because people can find back the control. They can say, okay, this is something I can do. This is something I have influence on. Or if it means, for example, that you see that the world is treating people badly, for example, have conversations within your own circle of influence about how not to deal with each other, or how you want people to deal with each other, or yeah, how you want the world to be. Yeah. So you can influence that way. Yeah.
Дякую дуже за відповідь. Маємо ще одне питання.
Thank you so much for the answer. And we've got one more question. Are there any techniques that are helping in a phone conversation? If it's a hotline and a person calling in and speaking about difficult topics, how can we reduce the tension?
Yes. Yeah, because then you don't really see how much tension there is, right? So that is difficult. And the positive part of it is that you don't have the mirroring part. So you don't have the non-verbal signs that come across to you. But the downside of it is that you don't know how much tension there is. So, so what I do sometimes with people I have on the phone that are really, really, really stressed is to first do this exercise, this breathing exercise, for example, together, and say, okay, or if someone has talked about something already, and say, okay, let's just see if we can calm our nervous system down a little bit, okay? And then you say, okay, do you sit? Do you stand? Make sure you sit. Feel the chair, like a mindfulness exercise. Feel the chair, the contact between the legs and the chair and the feet and the floor. And let's breathe a couple of times together. And sometimes I even make sure that people make noise while breathing. So what I have been doing in the exercise that I did in the beginning, I sometimes also do that with people breathing. And then I see you breathe in deeply. And if you breathe out, you make noise like with your lips, right? It's a bit strange. But if you do that, people first will say, what? That's a bit strange or weird. I'm not going to do that. But if you do that yourself, then sometimes people go along and then it releases a lot of tension. Or you can say, if people find this too weird, you can also say, let's bring up the shoulders high, 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 and let them fall down, right? So do some physical, I would recommend do some physical exercises together to make sure that the tension lowers a little bit and people can actually talk about it more easily or let go of the conversation more easily. And what I also sometimes do, yesterday, for example, I spoke to someone on the phone that was really, really stressed and she's lost a lot of things and she had to do something very, very important. Is to remind her of a moment where she felt really, really strong or proud or something, a moment in her life that she felt good about. And sometimes to remind that together and get back that feeling that you had then, it can give some sort of a boost to end the conversation in a positive way or to remind yourself of a positive part of you that's still in there, that's still in your heart, never goes away. It just was out of your memory for a moment. Does that help?
Дякую дуже за відповідь. Колеги, можливо, є ще якісь
Thank you so much
питання,
for your
які хтось
answer.
хотів би озвучити
Dear
або
colleagues,
запитати.
anyone else who still has questions, you can share them in the chat or you can use your mic. Also, if there are no questions for now, I will take just 1 minute of your time. There is a feedback form that I have shared in the chat. There are also the communication channels that you can always use. You can subscribe for our mail list. You can join our Telegram channel, so please join us if you want to stay in touch.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. And also, if after this whole, so yes, of course, you can get the English version as well. And if after this webinar you come up with questions or you, after a couple of weeks, you come up with questions, please feel free to reach out either through the WHO or shall I give my email address? Is that good?
Так, звичайно, ви можете залишити свою
Yes, you can show your address, and also I'll use this opportunity to mention that we have already shared the slides with every registered participant in Ukrainian and in English, and also the recording will be available on YouTube for a week, and there is also a link in the message you should have got if you are a registered participant.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, if there are no further questions, then I really want to thank all of you for being here this morning, for carving out time for yourself and for each other, and to share your experiences with me on this very important topic on talking about sensitive subjects and also taking care of yourself. So please, thank you again for being here, and please take good care of yourself.
Дякуємо дуже, Jitske. Дякуємо всім,
Thank you
хто
so
долучився
much,
до вебінару.
Jitske. Thank you everyone who was with us today. We truly hope it was useful, and this was yet another reminder how important it is to take care of ourselves before, during, and after interactions with the clients. Thank you so much, and we wish everyone a nice day.
Всім гарного дня. Дякуємо.
Yeah, have a nice day, everyone. We are grateful to the trainer, to the technical support, to the interpreter. Thank you.